Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about two different books by Maya Angelou. The first being I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and the second being a collected complete works of her poetry. The first time you would have seen this book is on the last haul that I did, I think, where I was borrowing it from my friend who's studying abroad, and after about 10 pages in, I was like, I need my own copy. This memoir of hers is like her childhood to young adulthood. So it starts with her and her brother Bailey moving to Stamps, Arkansas to live with her grandmother and their great uncle. And I don't understand why this book was not part of a curriculum. Like even in high school, there's no excuse. Like me and my sister actually went to the same high school. One of the things that we used to get really frustrated at in English is the fact that whenever we looked at anything to do with like segregation in the southern United States, civil rights movement, anything, it was always through the perspective of white people. Like it was literally like To Kill a Mockingbird and books of that nature. Not even just that, that's in the context of looking at the United States. In Canada, there is a aggressive effort to eradicate any acknowledgement of the fact that slavery and segregation were both institutions in Canada that were upheld for a long time. So in part because of like the institutional reasons for that and just my own lack of awareness, something that stood out to me when reading this book was that I had never actually really considered or thought about the geography of segregation and infrastructure, like actual physical infrastructure around white supremacy. So it follows her childhood in Stamps. Then when she is 8, she ends up moving to St. Louis with her mother, and there she is sexually assaulted by one of her mom's boyfriends. So I mentioned that just as a content warning. But there's also lots of other important stuff that gets talked about and discussed in just such a poetic way. Like, you don't need me to tell you how amazing and important this book is. And then after St. Louis, she moves back to Stamps with her grandmother, and after she graduates, she ends up moving with her and her brother to San Francisco again with their mother. Another thing that she talked about that I hadn't really considered before was she talks about living in San Francisco during World War II and how like the dynamics between particularly Japanese Americans, but how this extended to Asian Americans generally, and like how the geography of space changed and shifted between Asian American populations and the African American and Black Americans. It was just another discussion around like the geography of white supremacy and racialized violence and racism. Another thing that really stood out to me was the entirety of chapter 35, which is when she's talking about like questioning her sexuality and how she was kind of reading about like the pathology of lesbians, because this is when she's like getting more into reading. On page 280 she says, "What I needed was a boyfriend. A boyfriend would clarify my position to the world and even more important to myself." And this was me. That's what Silence was about, the like spoken word thing that was very extra and I kind of regret putting up, but that's essentially what happened. Like I did the same kind of thing when I was 16. And then I also read the complete collected poems of Maya Angelou. These were very good. Again, like you don't need me to tell you this, it's Maya Angelou. Like there were a couple of poems in particular that I really liked. One is called On Working White Liberals. The other one is called America. And there's another one called Still I Rise, I think. Another brief point that I wanted to make is about women of color and memoirs. So as we've discussed on this channel, I love memoirs. I love memoirs so much, particularly women's life writing. However, there are issues around that. So, I mean, firstly, women can only have authority over their own lives, and that's all that they are qualified to write about. However, this is obviously specifically heightened with women of color, two-spirit, trans people of color, queer people of color, whose work if it is a memoir, if it is confessional, that's what gets accepted and held up in white readership, which has a lot of dominant capital in terms of publishing as well as purchasing power. I just want you to know that I am aware of that, and that a lot of the books that I read are memoir, and therefore a lot of the books that I read from women, trans people, two-spirit people of color are memoirs. But I'm making sure, and I'm consciously complicating that, because I need to make sure that I'm also reading the equivalent to that in fiction. Diversathon is something that is also happening right now, and I highly recommend checking out all the videos and different initiatives going on around that. I will leave links below to some of the videos that I've seen and watched. That was it for today in terms of talking about my Angelou. I hope that you read these books. Can I help you? Why is everybody yelling?